And good evening, everybody. I think most of you probably know me, but my name is Sean Driscoll. I'm the Communications Director for the Steamship Authority. On the call today, I've got Bob Davis, the General Manager. I see Bill Cloutier in the Project Manager for the Woods Hole Terminal Project in the audience, as well as Joe Levesque, who is our, what's his title? Assistant Project Manager, Bill's man. I also see Peter Jeffrey, who is our new Falmouth representative to the board. And I think that's all for right now that I see. As I said, we are recording this announcement, this meeting, and it will be posted to our YouTube channel and links from the Woods Hole Terminal Reconstruction page probably sometime by the end of the week. So just a couple of reminders. This is a public forum, but it's not a board meeting, so there will not be any votes taken tonight. What's going to happen is that, again, Chris and Leanne from BIA Studio will give their presentation, and then we'll take some questions and answers from the audience. Everyone should be muted at this point. If for some reason you're not, please do mute yourself. And then I will allow people to unmute and turn their video on at the end of the session when we get to the Q&A portion. So please hang on to those questions for the end. So just a couple of quick updates on what we're going to do tonight. We're focusing on updates to the site really since the last community input session and bringing you up to speed on where we are. The schematic design and design development phases were the bulk of what happened last year. So we're soon to be at the phase of getting construction bid documents out this year. And I think that is about it. So Chris and Leanne, I will turn it over to you guys.
All right, thank you, Sean. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm glad you could join us for this informational presentation. I'm Chris Iwerks, and I'm joined by Leanne Davis, my partner at BIA Studio, to go over the progress on the design of the site, terminal, and utility buildings. We're going to review some representative drawings of our team's work, but this is only a sampling of the nearly dozens of drawings and specifications that have been developed.
Is that showing up my screen?
I see the intro slide. You can go to the
Yes,
next one.
is it?
Sorry, I think I'm having an issue. Is that better?
Yeah, so far so good.
Can
Okay.
you go to full screen on that or not?
That is full.
It's as full as it gets. Okay. So this drawing shows the layout of the site, which has not changed since our last presentation, but is included here as a reminder of the components. The terminal is located near the center of the site with 3 linear bus berths adjacent to the east. Further east, which is to the right on this drawing, is the vehicle staging area with a new bike park to the north that will be made possible by constructing a new retaining wall along Railroad Avenue. Short-term parking and pickup and drop-off zones are located north and south of the staging area. Along the south side of the site, we have the employee parking lot at the bottom left, future utility building and yard, and the truck staging area. At the Cowdrey Road entrance, we have staggered the attendant booths to ease vehicle movements through this pinch point. Outdoor pedestrian spaces are being created. These are new outdoor spaces at Cahoons Park and the Terminal Plaza. And we have new landscaping designed for the perimeter, 3 sides of the vehicle staging area. Next slide. The area of the overall site is about 225,000 square feet, which equates to 5 football fields. And about 3/4 of the site is dedicated to vehicle operations. These elements all fit together like a glove, and the layouts are as efficient as possible. There's really not extra space in any of the spaces that we've designed. Pedestrian areas, which are walkways, plazas, and bus berths, are the next largest segment at 15%. The remaining 11% of the site goes to landscape areas, which are at 6%, and buildings, which are 5%. Our work in this phase is really analogous to the design of a complex system such as a motherboard. You don't normally see this part of a computer, but the functionality of the device depends on the design and integration of thousands of components. And we're really putting the majority of our effort into these kinds of development efforts that you don't really see from the outside, but they're important to making the building work. Next. The terminal plan spaces also have not changed. But we have gotten into a lot more detail in this phase. The areas shown in white are the public spaces, and those in light blue are support. The public spaces are comprised of vestibules, entrance vestibules on the east and west side, the east being the bottom. The waiting room is positioned on the north side, and the public restroom facilities are at the southeast corner. The scope that we're developing in this phase includes floor, wall, ceiling construction types, door and window types, finishes, dimensioning, casework, and extensive coordination with other engineering disciplines, including structural, mechanical, electrical, civil, and landscape, as well as DD specifications formatted for public bidding. This structural drawing indicates the extent of the 5.5-foot thick concrete structural mat slab, which extends out to the edge of the terrace where we have openings on the east, west, and north sides of the building. These are areas where we will use deployable flood barriers to elevation 17, and we need a continuous mat slab to resist hydrostatic uplift. The drawing also shows concrete wall and steel column elements that rise up from the slab, as well as things like dimensions, section markers, and notations throughout. This HVAC drawing, which starts to look a lot like a motherboard, shows the air supply and return duct work that threads through the ceiling. The mechanical room is positioned in the upper left corner of the plan. It's that rectangle in the upper left, not showing the equipment in there in this drawing. And it's important to note that all of our mechanical equipment is inside the building. There are no exterior compressors or fan units, as the geothermal system we're using provides all of the needed heat cooling supply. I want to point out a few things at the waiting room, and maybe Leanne, you can point to the waiting room. There are 10 air supply nozzles that are mounted high on the eastern wall that will provide primary heating and cooling for this space. And these will eliminate the need to run supply ducts across the ceiling. Return air ducts are located low in the east and west exterior walls and are routed back to the mechanical room within the concrete floor slab. You can also see that there is a lot of ductwork in the restrooms in the lower left part of this drawing. These are configured to provide each individual stall with its own independent air supply as a way to minimize cross-air flow between stalls. Lastly, there is also an underslab radiant heating and cooling system in the public spaces that supplements the air system. This layout is delineated on a separate HVAC drawing, which we don't have for this presentation. Next. Zooming back out to the site plan, this drawing shows where the temporary switch gear will be located in the employee parking lot. And from here, showing the new power feeds to the terminal and attendant booths. There is also a need to extend the power supply connections from each slip back to the temporary switchgear. Once the new utility building is constructed, those feeds will again be rerouted to the final switchgear location inside the utility building. Next drawing. This drawing is what is referred to as a reflected ceiling plan. That is what the ceiling looks like if we look down on a mirror. It's a view up instead of down like most plans. In the public spaces, we are using a recessed 3-lamp LED fixture in the wood ceilings between glulands, similar to the image on the right. These will provide excellent overall illumination and will be subtle in appearance. In the central support spaces of the plan, we have standard 2x2 LED fixtures set within 2x2 acoustic ceilings. And in areas with exposed structure, we're using suspended LED fixtures. To conserve energy, the code now requires that all interior lighting be controlled by occupancy sensors, which we have throughout. This plumbing drawing shows two different systems. Around the perimeter of the building, you see there are 10 internal downspouts connected to roof gutters. Our roof gutters run around the perimeter as well. These extend down through the building and under the terraces where they are picked up by storm drain piping beyond the walls. The second system shown is the horizontal sanitary waste piping system that picks up all of the interior plumbing fixtures as well as floor drains. Lastly, the drawing indicates where our domestic water service will enter the structure at the southwest corner.
So this page is an illustration of the major building elements, beginning with the structural systems, which you can see in the upper left-hand portion of the image. Both the terminal and utility buildings are utilizing exposed steel and wood glulam structure. The terminal building waiting room is a unique structural condition. So as pictured in the second image, it's going to have an inverted steel rod truss system. And that consists of a steel standoff, as shown in this image, and paired truss rods that extend the wood beam span. Using this inverted truss system, we're able to eliminate the need for any interior columns in that space. All of the windows in both buildings are a wood window system. And this is a highly durable hurricane-rated system that also has very high thermal performance characteristics. And that helps us meet the net zero energy criteria for the project. The utility building on the second floor, as you'll see in the later elevations, is utilizing a cedar rain screen cladding system. And that will gray and weather similar to a traditional Cape Cod shingle. Primary exterior metals will be marine grade stainless steel for railings, fasteners, and anchors. And both the terminal building and utility building will be clad in a regional granite veneer. And during the design development phase, we've been working closely with some local stone suppliers and quarries to develop a custom granite blend. And that blend will approximate the historic Falmouth granite that's been used locally but is no longer available. Both buildings have flat roofs with a tapered insulation system and a white membrane roof topping all of that assembly. And then we'll have photovoltaic arrays that are supported on curbs above the roof system. And that's going to be providing renewable on-site energy for the net zero project.
This is a view from the east side terrace level at the main entrance. The little plan in the upper left shows where this is, standing on that terrace, with the view angle shown in red. Here we are looking south. This rendering shows the steps leading up from the bus berths on the left, and one of the 4 access ramps that leads down to the sidewalk on the south, which is straight ahead. In the distance, we see the utility building across from the Cowdrey Road entrance. The automatic entry doors at the vestibule are touch-free, as are the automatic doors to the waiting room once inside the vestibule. This view is of the waiting room looking north towards the outdoor plaza and village beyond. The small plan on the left shows where this is inside the terminal, sort of down in a corner, with the view angle showing in red. After a lot of study of the east and west exterior walls where we formerly had round windows, we determined that an elongated horizontal window allowed a more extensive and panoramic view of the bus berths and waterside operations. This rendering shows the highly transparent north wall that frames an attractive view of the village with a green foreground. This quality was identified early on by village representatives we met with as a desired feature of the terminal. There was a strong concern that we find ways to make the terminal feel connected to the village and the village an inviting place to visit. To the right in this view are the busbars, visible through the east wall window. The waiting room roof support system is comprised of a four-sided steel frame around the perimeter that supports the glulam and steel cable trusses, which Leon just described, that clear span this space. From the waiting room, patrons will be able to see what's happening on the east, west, and north sides, and there will be an interesting play of natural light filtering in throughout the day. These drawings are of the long side of the terminal, the top being the main entrance facade facing the busbars, and the lower drawing depicting the west facade facing the water. The exterior granite-clad walls rise up to 12 feet, supporting a system of glulam beams which extend out over the terraces on all four sides. A continuous glass clerestory provides enclosure between the granite wall cap and roof plane. The very top of the building is equipped with solar panels supported on roof-mounted curbs. These drawings represent the coloration of the granite mix intended to approximate the Falmouth pink granite blend that is no longer available. The granite courses will be 12 inches high and vary in length. The primary finish will be textured, but we have not yet determined the exact finish process to be used. On the east side, there are two sets of automatic sliding doors forming the main entrance with access to the waiting room and public restrooms. The elongated horizontal window replaces the round windows we had before and is positioned such that it is just above the maximum flood level of 17 feet, thereby eliminating the need for deployable flood panels at these openings. On the west side, which is the lower image, this drawing is cut through the terrace, showing the ramps that lead down to the sidewalks. As on the east, the west side utilizes the same horizontal window for the waiting room. In the center, there is a single automatic sliding door for entrance into the west vestibule. The set of windows just to the right of the entrance are for terminal agents and managers' offices. The floor level here is raised 4 feet, and as a result, these windows have a sill height that is about 6.5 feet above the terrace. This permits the staff to have a clear view of the waterfront over the heads of people on the terrace below. Next slide. These two images show the shorter sides of the building, the ends. So the north side of the building on top faces the outdoor plaza and is highly transparent, as we saw in the interior rendering. In warm weather, sliding doors can be opened to further create a feeling of connection between the plaza and the village beyond. On the south side, at the bottom, there are doors leading out of the restrooms to the right, with a mechanical room positioned to the left. The granite coursing turns vertical on this end wall in order to provide a subtle change of texture to the horizontal emphasis of the east and west walls. The configuration of the surrounding terraces varies around the building, with a full terrace walk on the east side, which is on the right of the lower drawing, and that's 2.5 feet above the adjacent sidewalk. The drawings also show how the ramps and stairs are deployed around the building's exterior wall, dropping down to sidewalk level on all sides.
So the utility building shown here, the first floor plan, hasn't changed significantly since last presented. The first floor largely houses storage and operation spaces that can be accessed with equipment through the roll-up doors. The first floor spaces are designed to be wet flood proof and can be evacuated prior to a storm surge event. Consequently, the exterior walls are a concrete cast-in-place wall with the granite veneer that we were describing earlier. And interior walls are primarily a concrete masonry unit partition. During the design development phase, some of the scope that has been developing on this building, similar to the terminal building, includes dimensioning and finishes, as well as floor, wall, and ceiling construction conditions, door and window types, casework detailing, and the most substantive piece of that effort has been the coordination with the engineering disciplines, including structure, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire protection, civil, and landscape. We've also had input from the Falmouth Fire Department that's been incorporated, and that's informed the layout and access to fire department connections on both buildings, and also the building fire protection systems. The second floor of the utility building houses the staff spaces for vessel crews and site operations. And included on this floor are the locker rooms, staff restrooms, break room, and multi-purpose room. Also on this floor, we've got terminal storage, which was relocated from the terminal building, and a concession storage space for vessel concessions. The electrical equipment needed to serve the entire site, as we initially described looking at that electrical site plan earlier in the presentation, is all finally going to be located in the electrical room in this building on this floor, as is the telecommunications and HVAC equipment for this building. Shown here is the roof structural framing plan, and similar to what we were describing earlier, the structure on this building is a steel primary frame that supports a wood glulam beam system that runs in the north-south direction. And the wood glulam beams project slightly beyond the exterior wall on the two north-facing elevations to echo the canopy design of the terminal building. This drawing is illustrating the ductwork layout for the utility building's second floor. Now, similar to the terminal, the utility building is using a VRF, or variable refrigerant flow system, and that provides the heating and cooling. So the ductwork in this building is only used to provide makeup, air, supply, and return. The mechanical room, internal equipment's not shown on this drawing, but would all be located within that space. The first floor of this building is largely unconditioned, so it doesn't require HVAC equipment or ductwork. The exception being the two entry stairs, which communicate directly with the second floor. And since all HVAC equipment is located within the building's mechanical room, we're able to achieve that, as Chris was touching on earlier, because of the use of the geothermal system serving the VRF. So there won't be any exterior rooftop condensing equipment needed in this building. This electrical drawing is showing the second floor's reflected ceiling plan and illustrates the ceiling finishes and light fixtures. So the corridor, locker room, staff restrooms, and tel data room are using a standard 2x2 acoustic ceiling system with LED lay-in fixtures. Storage and mechanical spaces are simple exposed structure with strip LED lighting mounted to the ceiling. The break room and multi-purpose room have exposed structure with pendant LED fixtures typical for these occupancies. And lastly, we have the two stair areas at the main entryway and the northeast corner of the building, which have an exposed structure with wood ceiling and the same recessed multi-lamp fixtures as the terminal. Similar to the terminal, all spaces are going to be equipped with occupancy sensors that will control all the lighting in the building. The plumbing systems are relatively simple in this building since there aren't many plumbing fixtures. Sanitary lines from the break room and staff restroom collect and feed into the sewer main system, which is located to the northwest of this building. Additionally, we have floor drains and internal leaders that connect up to the roof drains above. And those tie into an oil water separator that then feeds into the sewer system. And the oil water separator is also sized to remove oil in the event of any spillage in the waste oil storage room on the north end of the building. And that has specific code requirements that mandate containment for that space. Also on this drawing on the right-hand side to the east is a natural gas emergency generator. And that's located roughly where the existing generator sits today. Moving to the exterior of the building, shown here are the north and west elevations. And these are the sides of the building facing Cowdrey Road and the waterfront. Similar to the terminal, the exterior walls are a granite veneer and a 12-inch high coursing pattern done in the custom regional granite blend. 2 roll-up doors on the first floor will be a frosted translucent panel, and this door won't provide any visibility to the interior, but it does allow natural light into the first floor, and that reduces our interior lighting load for those spaces. Similar to the terminal building, the windows are a wood system that's highly durable, hurricane large missile impact rated, and also with a high thermal performance to meet the net zero targets. Above the second floor windowsill line, we have a cedar rain screen system that's used to infill where windows are not required. The east elevation here on the upper side of the sheet is the side of the building facing the employee parking lot. And you can see this elevation includes an access door that gives staff direct access to the second floor. The majority of this elevation is a cedar rain screen above the stone sill line. The south elevation, which is the lower drawing, faces the southern property line, and this elevation has been developed so that there are no windows, which was an abutter request. Also visible on these drawings are the photovoltaic panels that are mounted on the roof and the elevator overrun, which is on the left-hand side of the drawings, which would be the western end of the building. And just adjacent to that overrun is a small roof hatch. No other equipment will be located on the building's roof. These site sections are showing the 2 buildings in the greater context of the site. The top view is cut looking south and shows the terminal and utility building north elevations. So here you can see the waterfront pier and slips with the island home for scale. And also visible in this view are the bus lanes, bus islands and shelters, attendant booth, and photovoltaic canopy next to the vehicle staging area. The lower view is cut through the vehicle staging area looking west towards the waterfront. And in this view, the terminal and utility building east elevations are shown. So the bicycle park at the north, which is the right side of the image, shows the photovoltaic canopy there that provides shelter to the bike park area and the passenger pickup and drop off, and a retaining wall that steps up to Railroad Ave and supports a landscape buffer. To the south, on the left side of the image, a similar retaining wall and landscape buffer steps up to Cowdrey Road. And from Cowdrey, an existing stone wall then rises up to the employee parking lot and with the utility building beyond. Also visible in the employee lot is the photovoltaic canopy there that supports solar panels and a stone revetment at the southern edge of the property. So next we're going to shift over to the landscape design, which has seen some developments since the last presentation and has also benefited from some input by Arden Edwards and a group from the Woods Hole and Falmouth community. So this drawing is an overall materials plan that illustrates some of the different site elements in the plaza in Cahoon Park. We're just going to zoom in on some of these elements to discuss them in a bit more detail. So looking at Cahoon Park, on the right side of the drawing, you can see a new crosswalk that angles across Loscombe Avenue to the existing access ramp near the Quicksville Tavern. From there, a new walkway slopes up to a landing that provides an accessible crosswalk connecting to the terminal plaza. Along the northern edge of the park is a raised planter bed that abuts the existing concrete wall and cedar fence next to the Nishan Trust property. And the planter bed edges here will be raised about 8 inches using reclaimed granite material that was saved from the old park. And that same reclaimed granite material will be used to edge all the raised planter beds in the park. Evergreen plant materials planned for that northern bed, similar to the old park design. And we have an image later in the presentation just showing how that looked. In the center of the park, we're including a granite base to hold the historic horse trough fountain. Based on our meetings with Arden's group, we understand that the location we're proposing is very close to the original spot that horse trough historically sat. Near the fountain is a series of bronze plaques set into the pavers, replicating the fish plaques from the original park as well. Also in the center, we're showing 4 post-mounted interpretive panels that sit in that central planter bed. The content for these panels is going to be developed in collaboration with SSA and community groups. And a number of suggested topics have already been identified by Arden's group. To the west, the waterfront edge is defined by a series of large granite blocks that are stacked into a tiered seating arrangement. And then wooden benches are positioned along the water's edge. The paved pedestrian area continues along the bulkhead to the west up towards the slips where it connects with the pedestrian zone along the western edge of the site. And the southern edge of the park gradually slopes up to the plaza elevation, again, creating that accessible path to the terminal building and plaza. Moving over to the plaza now, the crosswalk connecting the park and plaza is going to be a stamped colored concrete, which is lined on both sides with a in-ground light fixture that will make the walkway and pedestrians much more visible to exiting vehicles. The plaza is defined by a series of planters that are edged with stone walls and wooden benches, and the stone site walls will be the same regional granite as the buildings. The planters have been shaped to define the northern edge of the plaza and prevent a landscaped edge to the village, facing Luscombe and Railroad Avenues. And the internal planters and seating are set up to create an exterior waiting space and also to preserve the desire lines for the primary circulation paths. On the right side of the drawing, a materials legend describes the various pavements, vertical elements, rails, and site furnishings. All pedestrian areas are going to have a concrete unit paver system, but the paver size, layout, and color are still in development at this time. Seating in the plaza and park is going to be wooden benches and granite block, which we have on the following slides in a bit more detail. So here you can see some more detailed drawings that illustrate the stacked granite seat walls in the Cahoon Park, which are meant to resemble a seawall that faces the water's edge. And these stacked walls provide tiered seating and also form an edge that helps contain the built-up landscaping. This slide shows several examples of wooden benches and granite site walls that will be in the plaza. And again, the granite's going to be the same regional blend as the building facades. Also shown here in this lower left drawing is a example of the soil cell system that we'll be using. And the soil cell system creates a structural zone that tree roots can grow into, and that allows for a healthier tree and will also prevent an uneven walking surface from developing in the future. The plant list that's been developed for the project with input from the community hasn't changed since our last presentation, but as a general approach, all plants are going to be selected from a list of native, non-invasive, adaptable plants. While final selections haven't been made yet, and that will happen in the next design phase, you can see a representative list here. We also understand that there is a desire for beech trees, given the history of beech trees along Railroad Avenue, and the landscape architect is reviewing that at this time. We also heard a concern from Arden's group over planter maintenance and how that will be maintained. So it's going to be our recommendation that SSA contract for maintenance with a landscaper for the general care and upkeep that the park and plaza landscape elements will require. So lastly, we have a pair of images that show the before and after views of the waterfront from Railroad Avenue. This panorama shows the pre-existing terminal building that sat on the wharf that was between Old Slip 3 to the north and Slip 1 at the center of the site. On the roof of the old terminal building was a 100-foot tall Wi-Fi antenna and also the building's mechanical equipment. You can also see in this photo the old Cahoon Park on the right-hand side of the image next to the Nishan Trust building. There's an aerial image just at the lower left-hand corner, also the slide that shows the pre-existing condition and plan with that view cone approximating the field of view. Now this panoramic view is roughly in the same position with the site plan and view cone shown on the lower left-hand corner again. To the right-hand side of the image, you can see the Quixhole Tavern building and the new expanded Cahoon Park with the sidewalk path curving up as the park elevation rises to the terminal plaza level. Beyond the park is the Slip 3 transfer bridge gallows and the waterfront northern pier structure. The terminal building plaza presents a landscape edge, and that helps define the edge of Luscombe and Railroad Avenue, and also offers some greenery to the view down Luscombe. The bus lanes, passenger waiting islands, and bus shelters are seen in the foreground in front of the terminal building. And on the left-hand side of the image, you can see the pickup drop-off area and the existing crosswalk in the foreground that crosses Railroad Ave at the bike path terminus. And that's in the same position as it is today. In the background beyond, you can see the utility building and the 2 entry booths at the base of Cowdrey Road. And just in summary, at the beginning of the presentation, Chris had noted that the landscape areas only represent a small percentage of the overall site area. So you can see in this image that the new landscape areas have been oriented and positioned to really maximize their impact, with the planters and pedestrian paths along Luscombe and Railroad Avenue really offering a much more connected and welcoming face to the village. And that concludes our presentation. So thank you, and send it back to Sean for questions.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Leanne. Leanne, if you could end your screen share so we have the full screen back. Thank you. Okay, so at this point, we'll take any questions or comments. So if you could hit the raise your hand icon on the Zoom, and I will allow people to unmute themselves and start your video if you wish. I would ask that you not unmute yourself until it's your turn to speak, and then remute yourself afterwards. And I will help you along with that if needed. So first hand I saw go up was Judy Laster. You have the floor.
All right, hold on one sec. So this question is for Bob. Bob, the Steamship Authority, represented by you, is a participant in the Resilient Woods Hole planning process. Is that accurate?
You're muted, Bob.
Yes, I've been attending those meetings.
And you're aware that the purpose of that planning process, funded by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, is to develop a plan for the Village of Woods Hole to adapt to sea level rise, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Have you conveyed the fact that you're participating in this process with the architects? Well, it would seem to me that it's a huge waste of time and money on the part of the Steamship Authority to proceed any further at this point until that resilient plan has been put in place, because of necessity, the decisions that you're making now are going to have to change and will be wrong in the face of the planning that happens with that process. And don't you think it would make a lot more sense to wait until that plan has been put in place and has significant community input, regulatory input, and input from all interested parties before your organization goes ahead and spends millions of dollars or something that may be useless?
So as part of the project already, we've been taking into account projected sea level rises, the building siting. We had a study done by Woods Hole Group as to the location of that. We're looking at resiliency measures. So in terms of that, we've been proceeding on the basis, we're a waterborne transportation agency, and we've.
Right, but I'm talking about the land-based side of what you do, the side that is in Woods Hole, the side that is directly impacted by the conclusions that the same Woods Hole group will make as for the entire village. Don't you think it would make a lot more sense to wait to proceed any further until that process is complete?
At this point, we're taking into account what we can do on our property.
So
on
then-
the project,
So basically you're saying your decisions are going to be made regardless of what's in the best interest of the community. Is that correct?
that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that we've already taken into account resiliency issues.
On your
for
own,
building up- for the
on your
building
own
of the-
property, but not the rest of the village. So the impact on the rest of the village is not taken into account in the decisions that you're making. Is that correct?
I wouldn't characterize it in that manner.
Well, it seems to me that if I were running an organization like yours and I was participating in an effort like this, the Resilient Woods Hole planning process, unless it's just a huge waste of time, which I don't think it is, since every single organization in the village is participating in good faith, that for your organization to participate in that process in good faith, that you would actually have the temerity to wait until other decisions have been made, until all input has been reached, instead of just going ahead willy-nilly.
All right, next I'll go to Damian Cuffler. Damian, you can unmute yourself.
Thank you very much. Over the years, the local community, as well as many residents along Woods Hole Road and in Falmouth, as well as many tourists, have been frustrated by the SSA behavior. The focus of this meeting is on the community. For the community is the failure of the SSA to take seriously the community's suggestions in regard to the new ticketing building, especially its size and location. While some concessions have been made, but only very reluctantly by the Steamship Authority, many people are still not satisfied. It's clear that you could have constructed a far smaller building. In fact, you said when you were building the Falmouth facilities that because of that, you could reduce the size of any future structures that you had to build in the Woods Hole community property. However, although I remain concerned about the oversized building, this makes me wonder whether Steamship Authority wants us to be extremely grateful because for the last number of years and for years to come, you have been working and forced to run your whole portside operation from such a miserably small temporary facility where there's not enough space for privacy, changing rooms, adequate lunchrooms, and other services, while the tourists must be terribly suffering in the small size of the lobby versus what you're proposing, which is quite a large, lavish facility, still demanding 5 ticketing booths, and from the drawing we saw this evening, an enormous space for people to hang out. Are we supposed to gush with happiness that you guys have been able to keep the Steamship Authority afloat using such a small, miserable facility? No, we're not satisfied. It only indicates that in fact, the smaller size facility is quite adequate for your needs, and you do not need such a palatial space that you insist on building. However, for me, the greatest challenge has been the Steamship Authority's constant lack of the ability to tell the truth. Almost constantly on so many issues, all I hear are lies. However, many of you must be aghast and say, slander, we're going to sue the bastard, or be offended. Therefore, perhaps I will call what I've just said statements that you make that are inconsistent with the facts. Here are a few examples. You claim that the ticketing building could not be smaller, but you made no attempt to reduce its size until you were effectively forced to. And that is what we've heard about tonight. This is without any disrespect for the architects who are only working within the constraints placed upon them by the Steamship Authority, who has its demands, and that's it. That's what the architects are stuck with. However, the exchange this evening, we've already just heard from Julia Laster, raises many serious questions about the ongoing actions of the Steamship Authority. You claim that the building you have designed is as, quote, as small as we could make it, but you have refused to answer the most important question which was proposed to you in a public forum, which was, did you make it as small as possible? You refused to address that question. You claimed that it was impossible to change the location of the building to reduce any possible traffic congestion and to reduce the blockage of the beautiful sea views. You refused to explain how it was not possible to move the building. However, I've heard evidence recently that you intentionally made it impossible to move the building by your initial infrastructure design and by installing it in advance so as to make it impossible to move the building. However, it's still up in the air whether it truly is impossible to have the building in another location. Looking at other issues, you complained that you've designed the truck staging area perfectly, but when under question, you had to admit that it was not really ideal because on many occasions or some occasions, you'll have to stage the trucks in the passenger vehicle parking areas. You claimed that you would stop running the 5:30 a.m. boat if it was opposed by the community. It was strenuously opposed by the community, and you continue to refuse to stop the boat. You claimed and swore that there would you would never use the third slip except for servicing and overnighting of ships. But now you claim it is essential and it'll be in constant use. And you have designed the building around and the ramps around that constant use. You claim that the Steamship Authority is not responsible for traffic backed up onto the Woods Hole Road because it's not your property. You're only responsible for what happens on your property. But you are solely responsible for the traffic backed up onto the road because of poor management on your property. Therefore, you are responsible. If a dog barks and the barking bothers your neighbors, are you not responsible because the noise only comes from your property? And
Damien, I think we're
shouldn't be going
losing.
elsewhere? Why should you be worried about the neighbors? If you're not able to manage traffic, yes, you can't hear me?
You're
not
cutting
hearing
in
me?
and out. You're cutting in and out, but you're back now.
Okay, that must be unfortunately a unstable condition on this island. I apologize for that. If you are not able to manage the traffic appropriately, in doing so become a nuisance to the community, it is your obligation to reduce the traffic you bring into Woods Hole, which unfortunately for you may mean reducing the number of ships you run by operating them with increased time between the runs, which would reduce the number of cars that accumulate and trucks that accumulate at any time. You claim that you're always monitoring backed up traffic from your traffic ticketing booths, but that's impossible. You cannot see the backup traffic from the booths, and you never have personnel up on the bridge trying to assist in managing the traffic. Such has been reported many times, the traffic going down the wrong way and creating much more serious problems. You claim you have a great standby ticketing system. However, when questioned, you cannot give a clear statement on what it is and how it operates, such as how many cars are allowed in the line, and to quote, because that changes, but you don't say what the regulations are, who makes those changes. You refuse to clarify things. You claim you needed a conference room in the two-story original building due to Coast Guard requirements for meetings. However, the Coast Guard said there was no need for such. This was a fabrication to build an oversized building, a palace to your own glory. You promised not to increase the traffic that you ship to the islands, but it increased it significantly. And I've heard that it is almost doubled since you made that statement. You claim that you have worked hard to establish an off Cape port, but appear to have scuttled the first attempt and then stopped for at least 15 years in searching for an alternative, only to recently claim that you are at a new effort. And that but why is it taking you so long to do this? And you claim things take a long time. Of course, it takes 20 years if you have 15-year gaps. You claim that Woods Hole does not have the largest port facility, but then you intentionally neglect to consider the secondary facility, which we've seen has grown massively, and it makes the site the largest of all your facilities. Finally, you call these events outreach, which is false for the use of such a word. Outreach means a dialogue, or to use a word that may be foreign to some of you, rapporte, meaning to give and take. There is no give and take from the Steamship Authority. You make statements, allow us to make comments, suggestions, and ask questions. How all you do is sit there looking bored, hoping the meeting will, looking like you hope the meeting will end as soon as possible, but never respond, obviously never during the meeting. However, tragically, you never respond afterwards. You never make comments, it's to say, by tweaking the building a little bit here or there. You never address the questions or say why you had to say no, or the reasons why you have objected and rejected almost all suggestions. I'm very sorry that now at this 90% completion stage of the ticketing building, no matter how much the design company has worked, it'll never meet the hopes and desires of the Woods Hole community, because what the steamship wants is what it wants and not really what the community wants, except for a little give and take here, such as, oh, we can put in a beech tree. How lovely. Good evening.
All right, thank you. Next, I will move on to Joy Robinson Lynch. You can unmute.
Thank you. I have questions and then a comment. I was looking at the design and there was a mention of these overhangs in several places being photovoltaic. Did I hear that correctly? I'm asking the design team.
Yes, that's correct.
But those $5 million things with the maps on them, they're not photovoltaic.
Correct.
The things that are there already that we, in my mind, I live on the Vineyard. I've been riding the ferry since 1961. Those things astounded me to find out that they cost $5 million.
They did not
And
cost, that's not accurate, Joy. I don't want to interrupt you.
Oh,
but
what?
it's
Well,
not a-
why was that the published thing when they broke?
I don't know. That's not.
So
it
what
wasn't
did they cost?
I don't have that in front of me. I can get it for you, but it's not.
Well, am I
$5 million.
close?
No,
Am I close?
you're millions of dollars off. So we'll get back to
Anyway,
it.
I'm concerned that it looked like in one of the drawings that the overhang outside of the ticket office was of a similar material, and that neither provides shade nor water protection. The current things there, whatever you call them, neither protect you from rain or sun. Are the overhangs that are going to be on the outside of the terminal building of a similar material?
Yes, they're
Yes.
of a similar material.
They don't shade you. There's no shade there. I stand under those. I ride the boat. They don't provide shade and water leaks down. This to me is an example of that it's pretty, it's grand, but is it functional? If you said to it, and so I would really encourage you to look at materials for how functional they are. It concerns me that I'm paying increased fees to ride the boat that I assume is going to help fund this. Really, I agree with the people who call it a palace. It's ostentatious. And I'm paying, I couldn't believe when I just booked my ferry for the summer, what I'm going to pay to get to my son's wedding this summer. I cannot believe what my car is going to cost $211 to go round trip to my son's wedding. So it's hard. But the bigger waste, I think, and what is hard for me as a public citizen is to see you spending this kind of money, and this goes to Bob and this goes to the Steamship Authority. I wish that you could take a fraction of this money and provide every single front-facing staff member with a fresh N95 mask every day. They don't wear N95s. They're unsafe for them and unsafe for us. And to spend this amount of money on this palace when you don't take care of us or your employees is gross. And I would again request that you go back and look at the materials for those overhangs.
Okay, thank you. Next, I'll go to Pam Stark. Sorry, Pam, you can unmute yourself if you haven't.
Hi, yeah, I did unmute myself, and I just wanted to say my concerns are, I appreciate that the design team has worked closely with Arden and her group for the Cahoon Park and the pavilion area and greening them up. But in that I cross your property at least daily on foot, I've grown to appreciate the perimeters of the north, south, and east edges of the property. Redundant, but they have gently sloped hills. They're grassed. They have beech and apple trees and juniper. And these, the way they are right now, provide a very much needed buffer zone between the air pollution, the noise pollution, and the site pollution that the Steamship Authority is. And it's my understanding now that you're planning to remove part of the bank that goes up against Railroad Avenue for the bike parking. You know, I'm not an expert on what is allowable between a public road and the abutting property and how much space you need to have. But my concern is that you are going to increase the noise and the air pollution with your idea of putting a retaining wall there instead of the existing grassy hillside with the beech, apple trees, and juniper. And I'm afraid that you're going to do that to the other two perimeters as well. And it will force the air pollution and the noise pollution to increase, removing what you currently have there. So I'm sorry that I sound so passionate about this, but we can only take so much abuse from our neighbors. The community has been asked to put up with so much over the years. And I appreciate this chance to mention my concerns to you. And I would like you to answer this question. Are you planning to remove the hillsides on the north, south, and east banks of your property?
Chris, can you briefly address that point, or Leanne,
Yes,
whoever?
there are trade-offs here. So the bike park was originally located down on the water where the Cahoon's Park was. There was a decision to not have it there, to turn that into a bigger green space and to move the bike parking area to essentially the terminus of the bike path itself. In order to position it there, we have a bunch of dimensional constraints. So we do need to redo the slope. We're not completely eliminating the landscape on that side, but it's a narrower band of landscape. And that's where the trade-off was that, this is not a site where you can have everything, fit everything in and get everything to work. And we would do our best to try to get things to work with the constraints and the requirements that we're given. The other two sites will be re-landscaped as well, although they do not get cut back that far.
Oh, excuse me, that far. Okay,
That far. Okay.
continue. How far will you be cutting back to increase your tarmac area in the village? How far?
Hold on.
Excuse me?
Leanne,
I didn't hear you.
He's looking it up, Pam. You've got to give him a second to get to the figure.
Yeah, I don't think I have an overlay that I can show you the existing and the new configuration on the south, on what's it, the east edge. Liam, do you know offhand?
What the exact dimensions are, I don't
Right.
know offhand. It's not as simple as cutting the slope back because we're raising the grades as well for resiliency reasons. So that in and of itself raises the toe of the slope some. I can say that there's a net add in green space on the site overall. And we have made that a priority in the design.
I am not a water flow specialist in any way, shape, or form, but the current earth hillsides, I would think would help with any emergency water flow as opposed to basically creating a funnel down under the bridge and up the rest of the bike path. That, please, take that into consideration when you remove more green space from the perimeters.
Thanks, Pam. And we can follow up
Thank you.
with you for more detail on that as well.
Thank you.
Okay, Stephen Laster.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I appreciate the time tonight. I am sure to Sean and Bob and Leanne and Chris, you probably want to be here as much as you want to have the shoulder surgery that I just had. So I do appreciate you being here. I'm sure this is one of your least enjoyable tasks of the week. And let me address that. There are a number of people from the village who are not here tonight. There's a deliberate conversation where many of us had and said, by participating, do we enable a sham process? And should we boycott? Or by boycotting, do we lose our voice when surely something that is a sham process? Bob, you've done a tremendous job of running out the clock. Masterfully. Bill Belichick-like. Well done. So I'm here tonight because I would rather engage with no power and no leverage than have my voice silenced. But I think you should know that behind my words, there are 50, 60, 100 other people in the village who feel the same way. They're just tired of meeting with you, as I know you're tired of meeting with us. It's clear we're at the point where we're talking past each other. And that's a shame. I bought my house on the Woods Hole Road nearly 30 years ago. It's a small house. It's a lovely house. It was owned by Mr. Stewart, who's a lobsterman in town, who delivered lobsters to Sam's Market. It's full of history. I've grown up my family there. We've outgrown the house. Chris, we can't hire you to be the architect, and we can't add on to the house because, Bob, you've ruined our quality of life. It's personal. It has to be. Because for most of the year, we can't sleep beyond 5 o'clock in the morning. We'd like to sleep till 6. Is that too much to ask? Is it too much to ask that we take care of each other as humans? I don't know what the management of the steamship's end goal is, but clearly it is bigness. It's not quality of service, as that's gone down. It's not a cost-effective operation, as costs have gone up and cost pressure is real. And there's very little economic resiliency left in the operation, as demonstrated by the near fatal statements at the start of the pandemic. We measure organizations along 3 main criteria. 1, how well do they serve their customers? 2, how resilient is the operation and efficient? Meaning, how do you deliver the service your customers demand in a sustainable manner at the lowest possible cost? And then thirdly, good organizations, as evidenced by all business research, are measured by their impact on other stakeholders. So let's look at the leadership of the steamship. Costs have gone up, efficiency's gone down. Resiliency is down as measured by canceled trips and breakdowns, staff morale. Impact to other stakeholders, incredibly negative. F. That's a shame because it doesn't have to be that way. Sean, do you remember at our last or 2 meetings ago, I asked you and you promised to send to me all discussions you had, whether or not you explored what the smallest possible terminal could look like. In our discussion recorded, you said you didn't know and you would get back to me. You do know you never responded to me, correct?
I don't know that, Stephen. I thought that I had, so.
You had not, and I'm a patient man because I'm a good person. And I start from the presumption that we're all good people. But I will tell you that I'm insulted that this design process went forward and you never responded to me. And I wish you would. And
I
that came
will.
up again tonight in an earlier comment.
I apologize for that, Stephen. I will do that.
You are forgiven as long as you follow through. That's how I forgive easily. When people are rational, I forgive. So if we look at the triple bottom line, Mr. Davis, you're leading a failed organization. The facts, not opinions, speak to that. If we look at the engagement trap, A+, you've used a timeline to really limit how we can engage and to run out the clock. Certainly after this meeting, you'll say we're at the 90% phase and nothing can be done, but you've had public meetings and therefore you're going to circularly rationalize your decisions. And that's insulting to the village and the town. And I've told you why there's low turnout. I'd like to take a minute and just ask Chris and Leon a question, if I might. Masterful presentation, clearly skilled at your craft. Kudos. In fact, I might say that your process really is drawing on innovation techniques developed in other creative industries. I might say that you run an outcome-driven design process that equips participants with a methodology for maximizing project success, understanding stakeholders' desired outcomes, provides the key insights needed to create truly responsive design solutions. Guys, where did I get those words?
Sounds like it's off our website. Is that a rhetorical question?
From your website. It's from your trademark outcome-driven design process. Can you truly go to sleep tonight? Can you truly stand up at the next company meeting with all of your Gen Xers and mission-driven staff that I know you have? And can you truly look them squarely in the eye with a straight face and said that your work, your $4 million of work to date, has truly delivered an outcome that really tried to optimize across all stakeholders? Because you can't, because you didn't. You see, you play a role in enabling this bad behavior, and that will stain your firm in perpetuity. You may win some near-term design awards. I'm sure you're going to make these buildings efficient. I'm equally sure 20 years from now, you're going to be mocked that you allowed the steamship to overbuild in what is now flooded land. And your short-sightedness will be evident. My sister made a rational request. She said, why not, Mr. Davis? Why not join the village? Why not slow down since construction prices are at an all-time high anyway? And why not join the resiliency conversation? And by the way, Chris and Leon, why don't you pro bono contribute some of your $4 million to make Woods Hole resilient and sustainable? Then and only then you can be truly proud of the work that you're doing. But instead you are ramrodding a Taj Mahal into a village that values a steamship that wants to be part of the village and disdains a steamship that is just built on exploiting the village. And to BIA, I can't imagine the people that work for you want to be willing participants in this process. And if you'd like me to talk to them about it, I'd be happy to, because I think they should know. So in closing, you're at the 90% phase of a flawed design. You've gotten here through disingenuous conversation. You've heard consistently from the village that we want you here as a partner. We want you here as a low-cost, sustainable operation. You are a lifeline to people we care about, and we need you to change. And you're running out of time. Sean, I hope you keep your promise to me. Mr. Davis, I know this is not what you wanted to hear, and you're probably multitasking, and I understand it. But please try and hear my words. Please try and not talk past each other. It is not too late. And to Chris and Leon, you are the instigators. You play a role in turning this ship, no pun intended, into the right direction. Think about your role in this, please. Thank you for your time.
You're muted, Sean.
How embarrassing. I never remember to unmute myself. Eugenie Kuffler, you're up next. And Stephen, thank you.
Hi. Thank you. So bravo to the two lasters. That was just wonderful. So I have to read my statement. Here we are at the 90s design phase, and the only community requests that have been heeded are the replacements of the portholes in the terminal building by square windows and the community participation in the choice of plants and maybe more in the Cahoon Park. As such, these last weeks, I've been trying to scope what is being imposed upon this community. And I have been since beginning very concentrated on the corner of Luscombe and Railroad. On studying the BIA studio layout plans, I note that the current island between the embankment and the exit with its beach and maple will be eliminated. And if I'm reading the plan correctly, the curb cut on Railroad Ave will be approximately 120 feet, and the total stretch of the exit from the embankment to the intersection of Railroad and Luscombe approximately 170 feet. Buses and taxis will have 30 feet to descend an 8.5 gradient, pass through the 75-foot passage between the end of the bicycle path and the terminal's outside waiting room, and make a U-turn onto Railroad Ave. I noted in the panoramic picture that you showed of the entrance exit to the site, that exit entrance looked very large, but if you look vertically onto the plans layouts that you've given us, they don't look like that at all. So they made the U-turn onto Railroad Ave. Cars will be staged behind the terminal building, and as they will have no visibility, will be directed onto the boats by attendants using talkie-walkies. The earth embankment along Railroad Ave with its bushes and trees will be partly replaced by a wall ending 6 feet high, providing erosion support for 2 rows of 100 bikes covered by solar panels. I do not think the 200 bikes racks are necessary. The cars and trucks coming off slip 3 will descend a 10-foot gradient at the height of the ramp, pass through a 35-foot passage between the west side of the terminal lounge and the border of Cahoon Park, and have 45 feet to descend the 8.5 gradient and exit. I note that even if the curb of Luscombe is respected, the third slip with its off-ramp, quasi-flush to Railroad, eliminates the character of that corner, which was a wonderful corner, full of history and very delicate. Now, from the height of the bridge, it is smudged out. I note that the 200% increase of pedestrian freeway that was acclaimed at the November 7 40% forum was acquired by filling in the 2 existing slips inserting a third slip and extending them 90 feet. Considering that the breadth of the 3 slips is approximately 400 feet, that makes 36,000 square feet of preempted public water. The immense berths now partially block the exit from the eel pond, don't look good from the harbor side, and have destroyed the proportions of the site, land side and port side. I also don't get the kudos of increasing pedestrian freeway, since the goal of the site should be a maximum circulation for trucks and cars. And what does the wavy green line in front of the ferry ramps really mean? Pedestrians won't be strolling along it when boats are loading and unloading. Concerning the third slip, I note then that when it was close by the Noshan dock, its use was limited by an agreement with the Noshan Trust to repairs of vessels with beams no greater than 62 feet. But 3 years ago, we were informed that due to an impenetrable rock ledge, the slip had to be moved south, putting it conveniently outside of any restrictions on its use. I call that bad faith. I am glad that SSA BIA have gone for lead qualifications, but as Rob Hanneman, member of the Martha's Vineyard Commission Climate Action Task Force, wrote in his November 15th article in the Vineyard Gazette, the SSA today uses roughly 10% of the fossil fuel attributable to Martha's Vineyard, largely, but not totally, in the ferries. And he added, plug-in hybrid propulsion could result in a significant reduction in emissions, perhaps as much as 95%. Yet we see no sign of recharging stations in this design plan. On April 7th, 2021, following the first community input meeting of March 23rd, 21 members of the community submitted a list of 18 questions. The SSA responded in May, but did not justify the excessive number of ticketing windows in the terminal, nor give a clear explanation of traffic flow, especially during peak season, nor recognize that design for the terminal went from 6,665 square feet to 5,631 square feet. Though it did that, the footprint remained the same. Nor did it note that the 1,034 square feet that were taken off the terminal morphed into 2,526 square feet added to the utilities building, bringing that building to 7,204 square feet. Nor did the SSA point out that the 20-foot high terminal building will be on top of the 13-foot gradient, thus obscuring the view from the bridge. Recently, we have been made to live with leaky butterfly cement canopies decorated with nautical charts, installed without community consultation, and we heard about them tonight. Due to their height and placement, they do not protect passengers boarding the ferries, and their bright lights make night navigation difficult when coming from the west through the passage. More recently, we discovered that due to inadequate probing of the substrate of the first slip, monopiles cannot be driven to an appropriate depth, and the necessary reinforcement will be a concrete enclosure, the top of which is expected to be at plus 10 feet. That's more clutter. I note that in a letter of June 24th, 2021, the Falmouth Select Board urged the SSA to seek grant funding for a comprehensive study of freight operations in furtherance of identifying a 21st century freight operation. We now have advanced to a request for proposals for off-Cape freight service. This is a time-sensitive issue. A 21st port century visionary would be someone who has studied the ferry systems in the Norwegian fjords and in Washington state. Someone who thinks globally and acts locally. An advocate of waterfront resilience. someone who understands the need to reduce traffic flow into a small village, maximize circulation within a limited space by building a small terminal building without a lounge area set back and off to the side of the lot. A project that could apply for, if not earn, lead points for site authenticity. Since July 21 of 2021, a petition has been circulating protesting the overdevelopment of the village by the Steamship Authority. It now has 1,018 signatures collected online and at the coffee shop Pie in the Sky. Charmed view of the harbor will be lost. These forums have been mere formalities for the SSA, but for the likes of me, they have been a painful encounter with a predatory rogue enterprise that feels entitled to destroy the social and physical ecosystem of a village while congratulating itself for fulfilling the mission of bringing necessities to another community also suffering from overdevelopment. But there is nothing that justifies this terminal with its immense waiting room and extravagant plaza, complete with potted bushes and synthetic stone-shaped sitting devices in the middle of a transit zone. Nor the estimate, and I do quote a letter I saw from Sean Driscoll to Nat Trumbull, the estimated $103,233,799 for the design and construction, plus the canopies at approximately 2.5 million apiece. So of course, to keep the business solvent, there is ever more publicity for fun, free Fridays on traditional ferries, higher prices for the rest of the week, and ever more traffic into a bottleneck. Protected by a quasi-autonomous status, we are left wondering what is the part beyond quasi, the part that protects the quality of life of the residents, we the people of the Commonwealth. So I am impressed and heartened by the nuisance complaint written by Nat Trumbull of SMART and addressed to Attorney General Maura Healey. I hope that she will step up and step in and oblige the SSA to open an off-Cape port and return the third slip to its initial purpose of repairs only. And that an enlightened SSA will reconsider the land site design, for after all, this is only the 90% design phase. Thank you.
Thank you, Eugenie.
You're most welcome. It's hard work.
John Woodwell, or I'm assuming John Woodwell.
Yes, indeed, that's me. Thank you. I would like to put the Steamship Authority's footprint into perspective. A commissioner raised the question of how big is the installation in Woods Hole relative to the buildings at the other terminals. And so if I can change my camera here, which I may or may not be able to do. There we go. I have the data here. Is that right way around or backwards?
I can.
Right way around for me.
I think it's right way around. although it's
Okay,
hard to
very
see,
good.
so.
Great. The question is, how big is the installation in Woods Hole? This is Oak Bluffs, the Oak Bluffs Terminal Building. This is the current Woods Hole ticket office that has served just fine for several years now. This is Nantucket, Vineyard Haven Building, all in square feet. This is Hyannis. When you take the new ticket office and the second terminal building that we've learned about tonight, that's it right there installed in Woods Hole. And then that is on top of the administrative building that won't fit under the camera. Let me see if I can fit it in here. There we go. That is the administrative building that the Steamship Authority built in Falmouth. That is 32,000 square feet. When you add all this up, when you take the administrative building in Falmouth and the Woods Hole terminal buildings, and you put them together, and you take all of the other buildings, the Steamship Authority buildings at the other carports and you stack them on top of each other, you end up with an installation in Falmouth and Woods Hole that is more than twice the size of all of the other buildings combined, something like 44,000 square feet. So this does sort of raise in our minds the question of why Falmouth and Woods Hole is so special. But yes, we would certainly say that the installation here in the buildings here in Woods Hole are grossly oversized and unnecessary. Ever since the Steamship Authority stepped unilaterally out of its agreement with the people of Woods Hole to limit the use of the third slip, it has been, once it built that new slip, it has been running, using Railroad Avenue as a discharge ramp for impatient drivers right off the boat, right up that road, right past the end of the bike path where there are pedestrians and children and bicycles all over the place. How long is it going to continue that practice? The current practice, if it continues, will, of course, result in a serious injury or death of someone at the end of the bike path. The question in my mind is to the Steamship Authority is, how long is the Steamship Authority going to continue to run vehicles, that is, discharge vessels right up Railroad Avenue?
Well, we're going to continue to use both
Yeah.
exits as operations dictate, as we have
In the
for
past.
many years. And Bob, you can, if there's anything else you want to add, but
Now, we've, since I've been working for the Steamship Authority, we've always directed traffic up Railroad Ave as well as Cowdery, and we continue to do so, and depends upon the traffic conditions on which direction they go.
As long as I've lived in Woods Hole, which is 1975 on, the overwhelming majority of traffic has gone along Cowdery Road. So thank you all for your time. And we are, of course, dismayed at the performance and decisions of the Steamship Authority. But thank you for your time.
thank you, John. And Nat Trumbull.
We no longer have any illusions about how the Steamship Authority prioritizes its own interests over those of Falmouth and Woods Hole residents. It's all black and white to us now. The Steamship Authority can ignore our interests, and so it does. The Enabling Act of the Steamship Authority allows SSA management to do this. My observation is that Nantucket and Vineyard representatives to the board are not likely to weigh in when Falmouth and Woods Hole communities are impacted. In their silence, Nantucket and Vineyard board members effectively allow Steamship Authority management to dictate large impacts on our community. There have been very few meaningful input from the Falmouth or Woods Hole community throughout the terminal reconstruction project. The exception is the lowering from 2 stories to 1 story, the terminal building. Today, we're at the 4th and I believe final meeting of public input. The 3rd meeting contained no updates on the buildings themselves. The very large footprint of the TIC building has never been modified. Steamship Authority management does as it wishes. When the terminal building was lowered to a 1-story, and we have to recall that required the intervention of Representative Fernandez in the face of very entrenched Steamship Authority views, the terminal building space was simply shifted to a new utility building. And the total square footage grew, as we've seen in John Woodwell's graphs, by an approximate 1,500 total square feet. And we do ask why the brand new administration building can't be used for some of the utility buildings' new spaces. Steamship Authority management does as it wishes. I have 3 questions that I'd like to pose before concluding. And the first one concerns light pollution. There are today 3 pairs, that is 6 floodlights on top of each of the new A-frames at slips 1, 2, and 3. Representative Fernandez 2.5 years ago specifically asked that light pollution be minimized with the reconstructed terminal. Light pollution has only increased. Those 6 floodlights on those A-frames are easily the brightest lights in all of Woods Hole Village. They're unshaded. They appear to point horizontally rather than in a downward direction. I've mentioned this to Bill Cloutier, who told me they're on 40-minute timers. But with up to 62 ferry trips each day, the 40-minute timer rarely has a chance to go off. So in my view, nothing's changed with that light pollution. And my question is, what specifically can you do to reduce the light pollution from those floodlights?
Nat, we've already replaced those with ones that are downward facing and are more shielded. Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's been done, correct?
That's my understanding, yes, that's already been done. We were waiting for the units to come in. They came in and they were installed.
When did that happen?
I'll check on the date and get back to you, Nat. I don't have that right in front of me.
Well, please do, because my observation from last night was that they're still very bright. About today's presentation, where are the line of sight renderings from locations that are so sensitive to Woods Hole residents? Renderings from the Crane Street Bridge, from the library, from Pie in the Sky. They're conspicuously absent today. You know that Falmouth residents are very concerned about the loss of water views, view sheds in general. Will we have access to renderings like those?
They don't, sorry.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether Chris, Liam, whether those have been redone, but we can get those.
And finally, I'd like to ask about the third slip, as many others have. And my basic question is, how actively will the third slip be used? We read in the 2017 DEP Office of Appeals and Dispute Resolution document, the size of the site's vehicle staging area acts as a practical constraint on handling more traffic at the terminal site. Any long-term substantial increase in ferry trips to and from the terminal site would require a larger vehicle staging area, which the project will not provide. The evidence supports a determination that while the use of slip number 3 will increase, overall ferry traffic will not. And then the very next year, we saw the Steamship Authority's total number of boats per day increase by 6 trips from 58 to, excuse me, I may have the numbers wrong, but there was an increase of 6 trips. And we wonder how that's at all consistent with the determination that slip 3 would play no role, or the new terminal construction would play no role in allowing for more traffic. So my basic question is, do you plan to add more trips in future as you did in 2018?
The schedule, we haven't looked at the schedule for beyond 2022.
So I'll take that as a no. Well, those were my questions tonight.
Thank you, Nat. We'll get back to you on some of those points. Okay, it's 6:30, so I think I'm going to call it for the evening. Chris and Liam, thanks a lot for your time. We've had a couple of people bring up points that we'll follow up on, and certainly anyone who has any follow-ups can email Bob or myself directly. So thanks for everyone for tuning in, and stay safe.